Welcome to Health Coach Talk. Today we are talking all about Beta-Glucan, what it is being used for, and if this is something that would be beneficial to your supplement regimen. So we also get into importance of research and why it is important when you are exploring in the supplement world to know the research behind these various supplements, and also how do you determine what is a quality supplement, because it may differ from manufacturer to manufacturer. So these are areas where my guest is a real expert, and I really value his expertise. I'm talking about Dr. Chris D'Adamo. He is an epidemiologist and a recognized expert in the impact of lifestyle nutrition and modifiable lifestyle factors on human health and wellness. He serves as the director of the Center for Integrative Medicine at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. He's also a principal investigator leading a wide array of research projects investigating dietary supplements, exercise for chronic disease, and multimodality integrative practices. He is a senior research advisor for the Institute for Functional Medicine and sits on scientific advisory boards for several nutrition-based organizations. He is a principal of Ovation Labs, and I am proud to say that he was the principal investigator for a randomized controlled trial that FMCA engaged in with the Institute for Functional Medicine that was published in Medicine a couple years ago. I know that you will enjoy this conversation with Dr. Chris D'Adamo. Welcome to the podcast, Chris.
Thanks, Sandi. Good to see you.
Good to see you. So let's dive right in. You, first of all, work with Ovation Labs, and can you tell us what that is? And I am privileged to know the people involved with that organization, and specifically, you are doing work with Beta-Glucan, which I just became familiar with. I knew a little bit about, but I've been so excited about the potential. So we can get into that. So welcome. We'd love to hear about your work with Ovation, and then moving on to Beta-Glucan.
Right on. Okay. Well, Ovation Lab, we do a number of different things in the sort of functional, integrative, root cause medicine space, working with practitioners like those in your audience, and around engagement in different, whatever it might be, whether it's natural products or different therapies or systems. I mean, a whole variety. One of the things that makes it so exciting for me is the variety and breadth of what we do. So I'm a clinical researcher by training. I spent about 20 years at the University of Maryland School of Medicine doing clinical trials and other types of studies, largely on natural products, but also more broadly, like, for example, we work together on the, functional medicine coaching randomized controlled trial with IFM, and it was a great experience. So sometimes we sort of zoom in on a specific therapy or preventive approach like Beta-Glucan we'll talk about today. And other times it's more practice level or coaching or whatever it might be. So it's been a lot of fun, and we're doing a lot of different studies and a lot of really interesting work. And I'd say one of the most interesting things we're doing is our work with Beta-Glucan. So.
Well, we're excited to hear about it. And it's so important to have research. And for so many years, we have not had the research because the big funding goes to the pharmaceuticals and able to have those kinds of studies. But I was always asked, well, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence that health coaching worked? And thanks to working with you in that collaboration, we showed the effectiveness of health coaching. And now we, rather than just saying, well, I've seen it work anecdotally, but really having the data to show the effectiveness. And so the importance of that for the supplement industry.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, it's great. I mean, we did, for the study that we did together, that was a randomized controlled trial. So that's about the highest level evidence. And there's a lot of that for Beta-Glucan too. And what I found so interesting about this, working with practitioners, training practitioners, medical students, and so on, is how little is known about beta-glucan. I mean, your reaction is the most common one. People are like, yeah, I've heard of that. But given the breadth and of evidence that there are thousands of studies supporting beta-glucan for a variety of different use cases. There's, for cancer alone, there's dozens of clinical trials using beta-glucan, usually as an adjuvant for cancer treatment. Then you look at the evidence, again, lots of clinical trials for respiratory infections and immune enhancement. That's one of the most interesting things, given its sort of core role in human health and longevity more generally. Then you've got meta-analysis of clinical trials for lipids, for mood, and it's one of those things where you sort of say, how can this be doing so much for human health? And I think a lot of it comes down to a really unique mechanism that beta-glucan has in the immune system. So beta-glucan is just, maybe to even say what it is, it's a polysaccharide that's in a lot of different foods and plants. So we often think about mushrooms, and mushrooms have been used medicinally for thousands of years in traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda and other medical systems. It's also in seaweed and yeast, where a lot of the best supplements are actually yeast derived. And what they do is they bind to these receptors. There's two in particular that are unique. One called complement receptor 3, or CR3, which used to be called the glucan receptor because it's specific to beta-glucan, and then dectin-1 is the other one. So what happens, and I'll sort of pause for discussion what it all means, is this stimulates the immune system to produce cytokines, natural killer cells. It greatly enhances macrophage activity and phagocytosis, which is where the macrophages gobble up pathogens. And therein, we clearly see the implications in infections, respiratory infections, and cancer, which is largely an immune system dysregulation. So that's kind of the main thing. But then there's all these other, like the prebiotic activities that these have. And we know when we're supporting the gut, what does that end up doing? I mean, it has obviously for digestive health, but even the gut-brain axis, we look at some of the studies on mood. So I'll stop there. I mean, that's how it can be doing so much. I mean, there are a few natural products. Like I think of like SAMI is another one that's still involved in methylation. It's like, wow, okay, so for joint health and depression and liver health, I think when you get to these fundamental mechanisms, the way beta-glucan does, you end up positively impacting a lot of different aspects of human health.
Well, that was really important information. And we train health coaches who really do not, it's outside of their scope of practice technically to prescribe supplements. But what you just went through is really so important that people understand and know about this. And health coaches can provide information. And often one of the biggest things they do is clarify myths or help people. So they may have somebody who comes in who says, oh, I don't believe in supplements, or just the opposite. And they are taking handfuls, with every meal, hundreds a day. And they see an ad, oh, I guess I'll add that to my stack. And so I would imagine that for those people like beta-glucan, and I am guilty of that. But okay, I'll order some of that and I'll add that. Yeah. But often not realizing some of the interaction effects. So can you talk about that? Like, okay, what if somebody is listening and they say, okay, I'm sold. I'm going to add beta-glucan. What are first of all, some of the contraindications and anything that would be a warning that it should not be used? And of course, it's always good. And I do want to point out that this conversation is for educational purposes. We are not prescribing beta-glucan or anything else for any individual who's listening, to always check with your healthcare provider. And it's not one size fits all. So going with that, who shouldn't be or should be very cautious about jumping in with beta-glucan?
Always where you want to start, right? That. So, I do view it as a foundational supplement. It's one I take myself, and there's a lot of interesting reasons why. I just gave the Cliff Notes version there. But people who wouldn't, given the immune activities, someone who's, if they're undergoing like a organ transplant, or if they're on an immunosuppressant, these are areas where you would want to, at the very least, exercise caution. Probably talk with your provider. And I think a lot of the education we do is help educate providers to understand these things. So that would be an area where, on an immunosuppressant of some sort, that you might be a little bit concerned. One of the classically people have been concerned about autoimmunity. Well, it's like, well, if this is enhancing immune function, well, then ought we not be concerned about autoimmunity? Turns out there's actually data that it can be helpful. Beta-glucan is helpful in those situations. I mean, nothing's a panacea for everything, but one of the ways that beta-glucan works also, and not to get too technical, but in the immune system, you've got adaptive immunity and innate immunity. So you've got your innate, sort of the first line of defense that's been preserved through millions of years of just evolution and different things, and adaptive, which is that's the learned. What's interesting, and that's more like antibodies. It's your body's exposed to something, and then it responds to that going forward. Then there's this one called trained immunity, which is actually training of the innate immune system, but it is kind of a memory. So it's one of those things where I think it's especially interesting when you look at, because you can have trained immunity that's negative, where you're exposed to certain things and your immune system just kind of goes haywire, or you can have it where it's positive, and beta-glucan is one that has that positive effect. So it's one of those ones that I think makes a lot of sense, especially during cold and flu season, to take beta-glucan just as extra support. Again, you don't make medical claims around it, but it's one of those foundational ones, like keeping vitamin D levels up and sort of zinc, vitamin C. And I put beta-glucan right into that mix, especially during periods of stress, during periods of travel, you're in an airport or an airplane with all these people, or taking public transportation or whatever it is, where you're going to be exposed to someone else in the house is sick. Those kinds of things. So, I think that the not would be people in immunosuppressants, and the who should take it would be, most everybody else should at least consider it if they're concerned and interested in supporting their immune function.
That is so helpful. And I had heard you on Kara Fitzgerald's podcast talk about it. And so I immediately messaged my daughter. So, I'm sending you. My daughter was about to go into a rehearsal for a play she was working on. And my daughter with kids, and they're, get sick all the time. And she's always getting sick. You need this. I'm sending it to you. She said,
that is. Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think with that too, and even it can be beneficial for kids. Again, the trained immunity aspect, where you'd be training their immune system, they would take less, But a lot of the studies, so the respiratory infection studies have been across the lifespan. So it's been everything from kids all the way through older adults that shows lower frequency, severity, and duration with beta-glucan. And it's a little bit different than some of the other things where it's like, you get the first sign, you might really go with a lot of zinc or elderberry or something. It's about a week or so with beta-glucan to kind of build up, some of the activity that you want for it. But that would be a classic use case, is some of the little kids or healthcare workers or whatever it might be, where you're around a lot of people, and especially this time of year where there's a lot of people that are coming down with things.
Yeah, there's differences of opinion, not specifically for beta-glucan, whether you should take something continuously or cycle on and off. So what are you finding with beta-glucan? Is this something that is in your regimen? Like I've heard, with vitamin D, I take it every day, regardless. It may boost it during times when cold and flu season, or if I've been exposed. But what are you finding with beta-glucan in terms of?
I think that sort of cycling makes a lot of sense. So with beta-glucan, for example, what I do, and a lot of people recommend, is I take a lower dose pretty much throughout the year, and then amp it up, to a higher dose during cold and flu season, or if there's some episodic reason, whether again other people are sick or traveling. But there's a lot of wisdom, especially with like different adaptogenic herbs, to cycle it. I mean, that's what people have done historically for thousands of years, is to cycle these kinds of things. So I think that same phenomenon applies here, maybe with dose, and you could maybe even take some time off altogether if one was interested, like during the summer months or something like that, or, I think that makes a lot of sense here. I mean, typically, now we can also talk about some of the differences between products on the market, but a very good beta-glucan, you may do like 100 milligrams, year round, and then during cold and flu season, bump that up to 250 or 500 milligrams, something like that. Yeah, that's what I do. It's what a lot of people recommend. And if someone's acutely ill, maybe even a little bit more than that. We've seen in some studies that can be helpful. But the big caveat there is that the activity of commercially available products varies so much from brand to brand. And this is not just a beta-glucan thing. This is true across all supplements. Our team just wrapped up a 5-arm study of different CoQ10 products, different commercially available ones. And there's some differences between them. But with beta-glucan, I wish we had more studies like this. There are head-to-head studies of dozens of different products that were led by Dr. Vedvika at University of Louisville that got off-the-shelf products and showed the difference in that, as I was mentioning, phagocytosis activity and other activity, and showed dramatic differences between brands, like the dramatic.
Wow.
So the one our team recently did a clinical trial, Beta-Glucan, actually looking at longevity, which we can talk about too. And we used BWH Labs products because in the studies by Vedvika, the head-to-head studies, they were as efficacious at phagocytosis at like an eighth of the dose, or even smaller. Again, showing that supplements are not all created equally.
Yeah, I recently met them at a conference. It was at A4M, and was really impressed with that, with their work, their team. And going back to the subject of health coaches, I think that this is one of the most important roles, is to educate people about what a supplement needs to be and what is out there. And I think it's getting even worse with adulteration, with buying things on Amazon where you don't know what you're getting. It could be completely, they'll empty the capsule, they'll change the label. They're getting very, very sophisticated about, just as they have a whole business with getting fake driver's license. Well, the same thing. Yeah. This is a big business with supplements. And so there's a lot of fraud going on. And so buying from reputable companies and helping people to understand why this may cost more than the discount variety, and how that discount may be very harmful. It's harming your health, or at best it's inert, not doing anything. And so
totally agree. I mean, it's one of those things, if you think about it, like I always say too, value shop your sponges or something like that, not things that you're going to consume that have biological activity. And think about it too, from the value proposition, even if you're getting the same effect at 1/8 of the dose, it's like, that is it 8 times or more expensive. So I think you got to think about the efficacy of what you're actually getting, because a lot of times people are just wasting their money because it's not doing anything, or worse, because there may be heavy metals or yeast and molds or other things that you don't want in the supplement. So it's an area where I've been passionate about having them be more clinical trials, more third-party lab testing of products. And I wish there were more studies like those Vedvika Beta-Glucan ones with the BWH Labs always coming out on top, is because that's what we need. So that's what practitioners need. That's what consumers need to know. So we're passionate about doing more of those studies too on different products.
There was an excellent book. It's a number of years ago now. I believe it was called Pandora's Lunchbox, something like that. But there were whole chapters about these vitamin factories in China that are just like spitting out, these vitamins and selling them here. But getting back to beta-glucan, is there an optimal time of the day to take it? Should it be on a fasted, empty stomach? I've heard 30 minutes before eating. What do you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think for optimal, it'd probably be first thing in the day, like in a fasted state. In our study, that's what we recommended. The people can take it, you can take it. It doesn't need to be. It's pretty versatile with that. Like certain things you want to take with a meal because they're fat soluble. Other things you want to keep away because you don't want them to interact with the different foods. This one is pretty versatile, but it's still probably optimally to have it, kind of first thing in the morning would probably be the best time.
Okay, so sounds like a plan. And I think that this is just really exciting, the research that has gone into beta-glucan and the potential. So where do you see this field heading, just, in general? What I'm seeing is there's so many new delivery methods, like there's ads for a company with a peptide, BBC 157. It's like, it's an oral spray, and they say forget injections, you can do it this way. Or there's Troches, these I got a little sample at a conference, tiny little and you just put them in your mouth between your cheek and your gums. And so what do you see in terms of the supplement industry and some of the new developments and delivery methods?
Yeah, I think all that stuff is pretty exciting. Yeah, you get the Troches, with certainly there's a company that's doing that really well. And yeah, oral
Yeah.
peptides. We actually did Ovation Lab did a study of Infinywell's oral BBC 157,
Oh,
which
I
was
just got
pretty.
that. That's the one you you spray.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we did this was a capsule one, but yeah, there's all kinds of innovations people are coming up with. Yeah, I mean different delivery, liposomal stuff, of
Yeah.
course. There's
Yeah.
some good brands been doing that. So yeah, I think it's interesting to see the new delivery mechanisms, and I think just having more research on these things so that we know how is this going to work, because sometimes the marketing gets ahead of the actual evidence or uh, effects of things. But it is an exciting time to be into this. I'm one of those two. I take quite a number of different things. But I've actually become a little bit more discerning as time has gone along, because I think the core foundational lifestyle stuff is really where it all is: and sleep, movement, diet, light, all that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of supplements that can help too, and I think different mechanisms can make it more convenient for certain people. Some people, most don't like taking 10 different capsules a day or
Yeah.
whatever. But so it is kind of interesting that we have these different delivery mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, the spray, the glutathione
Hmm.
spray, where you just you put it on your arm and rub it in, and so there's
Yeah.
yeah a lot of new developments, and I think that it's again where health coaches can provide that education, and
Yes.
also can help people to not be tied to one product. So certain cases, like with beta-glucan, BWH is a reputable, and that's the only one right now. But in terms of like vitamin D offerings or
Yes.
magnesium, like to switch off companies and find the reputable ones, but rotate them.
I agree. I mean, if a company has third-party lab testing that shows you, all right, what is on the label is in the bottle, and what's not on the label is not in the bottle, and if they've got especially research on their finished product, then that's a great thing. And I think we as consumers and coaches and educators, I think we owe it to ourselves to demand that. I think it is raising the bar. I think the expectation now is more than just, oh, research is a great differentiator, but it's actually something that brands should have, because that's what people want.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. What do you see in terms of acceptance in the traditional medical community? Any thoughts on, for primary care doctors? Is there any increased interest in this area? If you were to present a study on beta-glucan, for example, or
Yeah.
other products, is there more acceptance, or is there still this sense of like, that's no?
Yeah. Sure, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think there's an increasing acceptance, and that includes nutrition more generally. And I saw that change even with 20 years. And I'm still affiliated with the University of Maryland School of Medicine, so I still teach, in a couple classes there. And I have seen growing interest. I've seen growing practice. So, more and more people are taking this. Is what I'm taking. It used to be you may get a couple people taking a gummy, gummy multivitamin, but now
Yeah.
a lot of the physicians in training and those even in practice, I think more broadly are accepting of this. It used to be they would just say, "Oh, it's expensive urine," which was a disservice, because one, there was a lot of evidence for supplements, and two, actually supplements can, certain ones, be harmful for people.
Yeah.
So I've seen that change. I think what they don't fully understand, but a lot of people don't understand this yet, is that as you noted, it's still tough to get this research done, because there's not the big financial incentive. These products aren't patentable. So people say, well, there's not a double-blind, randomized, multi-site, super-controlled trial of this the way there is for some other like pharma therapy or whatever it might be. Well, that's because it's just much harder to get it funded. So I think that's the thing that I think a lot still don't understand, is if it's all level playing field. It's not. But the good news is that there's been enough companies that have invested in third party research to do this, that there is now a good evidence base for a lot of it. And I think you mentioned too, educating, the coaches educating. I think resources like examine.com, it's one of my favorites. It's free, for people. So it's a quick way to get in. And obviously PubMed's kind of your ultimate source for this, but that's a great source, I think, for coaches to recommend to their clients as like an educational thing. It's no recommendation on a specific dosing or product, but that site's great too, because it will actually show the interactions, it will show the synergies, it will show the research that's been done. So it's a nice place where all of that is. And I have no affiliation with them. I like it myself, and I think it's a good resource.
Thank you for that resource. And can you say the name one more time, and we'll put it in the notes as well.
Examine.com.
Very easy to remember.
Yeah, easy enough. Yeah, easy
Examine.com.
enough. Yeah.
So that's a really good resource if you're a health coach, and you can use that to support your clients in providing critical education. So I am curious about if you were to say there's you can only take a handful of supplements, and that you're on a desert island. I know this question has been asked before. Dave Asprey asks it all the time. He takes hundreds of supplements, but if there were, just what are the most critical? If somebody says, I don't believe in supplements, and you were to say, oh, well, try, this stack would be most critical for good health to supplement your food.
That's a great question. And so it seems so simple, but it's actually complex. But I would say if it's somebody who's relatively healthy and just looking to perform better and perhaps prevent illnesses or other things as best they can, I'd say vitamin D is one of those ones, especially if you are. I'm in Maryland, and I know you're in a northern latitude too. So that to me is a kind of a no-brainer. A good multivitamin, I think, is a good insurance policy for a lot of people. Not a substitute for a good nutrient-dense diet, but you just never know with the depletion of our soils and stress and so on. On that note, I think most people benefit from magnesium because of stress and other things in our environment, the EMF soluble, these things that deplete magnesium levels would be another one. I really like creatine, which has become it's become like in vogue now. It's become a really hot one, but I've been taking that for a long time, and not just for strength and body composition, but actually more just to produce more energy. As we're in these colder months in particular, you produce more ATP. That's a good one. Beta-Glucan for certain for the immune system would be another one. Then for, there's other things too. Like I'm a big believer in glucosamine chondroitin, which is kind of an oldie but goodie. I think you look at the data for that, not just for joint health, for someone who's interested in either preventing joint problems or dealing with them, but also for all-cause mortality. Surprisingly, it's a lot of these studies have shown that that's like number one in reducing all-cause mortality in these studies, or lower all-cause mortality. And then for many people, like a good fish oil would be another one. I mean, I think you're always better off getting that from your diet. Because there's a lot of not so good fish oils that are can be rancid and so on, but I think that's another, or cod liver oil, one of those types of things. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but there's other things that I take, but I think foundationally those are some of the key ones.
Well, you've met a lot of the ones I take as well. Urolithin A, I just keep hearing more and more things about from Timeline, and
a good CoQ10 as well. I mean, we just study that. I take both of those things. I take a good CoQ10. So that's it. So I guess with aging, there would be other things to think about. Supporting mitochondrial function, that's been really big these days. So you would likely throw in a CoQ10. Again, magnesium is quite helpful for mitochondrial function. And maybe PQQ, some of these other things that you could put in urolithin A. So there's a lot there if you really want to optimize things. I think those kind of foundational things cut across the lifespan. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting something too, but those would be some of the key.
Those match mine as well, and and I think that you can do this without feeling overburdened, and again without having shopping bags full of bottles of supplements, but knowing
you see there's like Santa Claus sacks with these huge things, but it does. You don't need to take that. You don't need to take all like a whole bunch of different things. You can, and maybe it works for you, but I think there's a lot of foundational things, and then there's specific needs depending upon what you might have and what you're looking to accomplish.
Absolutely. Well, this has been so informative. And where can people find you and learn more?
Sure. So our website is ovationlab.com, and you can join the mailing list. We've got all kinds of things going on. Podcasts. We have study opportunities. We're actually going to start, particularly for practitioners or those interested in participating. You can contact us for study possibilities too that are in natural products and other areas where you can participate in these, get the product, get whatever else testing and that goes along with it. So, but ovationlab.com is the best place to reach us.
Well, this has been great, and I really trust the work of Ovation Lab. And I know Tom Blue and Lori Hoffman, who was instrumental when she was CEO of IFM to partner with us to create Functional Medicine Coaching Academy. So I always have a warm spot in my heart for Lori and Tom and Nandy Crosby and the work we did together on the study, which is published in Medicine, thanks to your great work on that study.
It was a great team effort. That was a great team effort. But yeah, I'm really blessed to get to work with Tom and Laurie and Andy and others at Innovation Lab. We got a great team. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for being on Health Coach Talk today.
My pleasure.